This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Explosion rocks hotel in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. Egypt receives COVID-19 vaccines, but they can barely cover 1% of the population. And DRC President Felix Tshisekedi moves to set out a new political alliance. This is Africa Live. A warm welcome to the show. I am Peninah Karibe. Also coming up tonight, Egypt retrieves some 5,000 ancient artifacts from the United States. And in sport, a new Chelsea coach claims first victory with win over Burnley. We begin tonight in Somalia, where a massive explosion and gunfire have been heard near the main airport in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. Initial reports say the explosion took place at the popular Hotel Afrique. There was no immediate statement from Somali officials or the African Union mission. The militant group Al-Shabaab frequently carries out bombings in its war with Somalia's central government. Let's now get more details from CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo. He's live for us in Mogadishu. Abdul, give us more details on this blast.
Well, Peninah, the situation is still ongoing. As we're speaking right now, we were able to hear sporadic gunfire between the Al-Shabaab attackers and government forces who are stationed at Afrique Hotel. Now, at exactly 5 p.m. Mogadishu time during rush hour, there were a huge blast targeted that strategic hotel that is located along the airport compound, followed by a second blast. Now, it is believed that the first blast was a car bomb and the second blast might have been a suicide bomber before the attackers stormed their way into this hotel that is along the airport road. So what we know so far is the ambulance team that we've spoken to, they're saying that they've taken quite a number of casualties to local Mogadishu hospitals. We are not yet able to get police report because the situation is still ongoing. They have been reluctant to give information, but we've heard that there might have been several casualties outside that hotel. But then again, the important thing to note is that this hotel in recent weeks has been a hive of activities. Opposition politicians, clan elders, and members of the government also have been meeting there to discuss the elections that are upcoming here in Somalia. And it is such a time that militant group Al-Shabaab launches such deadly attacks, and the group has already claimed responsibility for this attack.
And you did mention the elections, Abdul. That's just in a week's time. So what plans are in place to ensure security of citizens as they go to vote?
Well, Peninah, in recent months, Mogadishu has been quite stable. Security forces had beefed up security across all entry points into the city. Attacks actually went down in recent months. Hotels on attacks and car bombs in the city were on a decline in recent weeks, even though there were some assassination attempts and some assassination took place here in Mogadishu, targeting civilians and members of the security forces and members of the intelligence. But in the run-up to the election, security always remains a big challenge here in Somalia. Al-Shabaab continues to threaten the electoral process. It has in the past targeted, killed clan elders, electoral delegates, as well as candidates for parliament and Senate. So during the election time, it's a time where Al-Shabaab launches more attacks, and it's a time that the Somali government will be put to task to explain how it's planning on conducting these crucial elections at a time when the militant group is waging such deadly attacks here in Mogadishu. Now, the election venues will be mostly secured by the paramilitary unit of the police, as well as with the African Union troops, AMISOM. Most of the election venues will be outside Mogadishu, apart from the election of the Benadir Senate, as well as members of parliament and Somaliland. So the rest will be under AMISOM. And the Somali government right now is planning to hold a conference tomorrow in the central Somali town of Dusamareb, where it is going to address the electoral impasse that has been existing. So it remains to be seen how the issue of security will be addressed after this attack, and whether or not even this conference that is scheduled for tomorrow will eventually happen. But for now, the mandate of the current president, Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo, only remains 1 week. His mandate ends endpoints officially on the 8th of February, and security definitely will be a big issue of concern, and it's one area that the opposition will be keen to tap on to challenge him in the upcoming vote.
All right, Abdulaziz Bilo live in Mogadishu. Thank you. Now, the number of confirmed coronavirus cases on the African continent surpassed 3.5 million on Saturday, making vaccinations increasingly urgent. Rwanda has set a target of inoculating 8 million people within 2 years, covering 60% of its population. Its first batch of vaccines is expected to arrive within the next 2 weeks. Kenya plans to offer vaccines to more than 1.2 million people before June, with priority given to frontline medical workers and immigration officials. Guinea has approved the use of Russia's Sputnik V vaccine. Some North African countries, such as Algeria, have already begun their rollouts. Among these North African countries is Egypt, which received its latest shipment of COVID-19 vaccines on Sunday. Acquiring coronavirus vaccines has been a challenge for the country, and this latest batch will cover less than 1% of its population. Adil Mahroui tells us more.
The 50,000 doses from AstraZeneca doubles Egypt's stock to 100,000. Cairo is struggling to secure enough COVID-19 vaccines and ensure their regular flow into the country.
I think that this challenge is for all countries, not only Egypt, especially the developing countries who didn't have any productive facilities.
In total, Egypt says it has secured agreements for 100 million vaccines, 40 million of which are from China's Sinopharm, which medical teams here have started to receive. The government says most of the 60 million remaining will be the Oxford AstraZeneca jab.
The difference between different vaccines now depend on logistics, the mode of transportation and the mode of storage. The Chinese vaccine, as it is a classical vaccine, it could be transported and stored at refrigerator temperature. Other vaccines may require very low temperature. It's found here in Egypt, minus 20 or minus 80 deep freezers, but the amount of vaccine to be stored need very large number of very low temperature refrigerator.
Egypt's health minister Hala Zaid says the public health sector has the capacity to store some 140 million COVID-19 vaccines. That infrastructure is mainly suitable for traditionally manufactured vaccines. As every person gets 2 jabs, what Egypt has a hold of is enough for only 50,000 citizens. And the country managed to secure that amount in 2 months. This is insufficient to inoculate the nation's medical staff, let alone limit the viral spread. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
South African healthcare workers will be receiving the first batch of vaccines in February. That announcement was made by the country's health minister this week. Angela Coppola tells us more.
While the vaccine arrives in the country at the beginning of February, it's not going to be immediately distributed.
After the arrival of the vaccine, they will undergo some technical processes of quarantine, which is specified in the law, quality assurance, reconciliation, how many vials are there, how many are broken, how many needs to be returned back, and all of those issues. These are all necessary for the safe distribution of the vaccine. These processes will take a minimum of 10 days and a maximum of 14 days to complete, upon which we will then be ready to distribute the vaccines to all the provinces.
The logistics around the vaccine are complex and require a multidimensional approach.
We will be using a hub and spoke model for the supply and distribution. So to keep most of the stock in one central point where there is good electricity supply and good security, and from there move out into a district, into various points where the vaccination program would happen.
A software program has been developed known as an electronic vaccination data system to manage the people registering and receiving the vaccine. There's a second aspect to the system.
So the system has been designed to link up with a stock management system. So as vaccines are being administered, it will be recorded, and then there's a link with the stock management system at the facility, as well as the stock distribution from the distribution side. So it's an integrated system.
One of the concerns raised by civil society and analysts is corruption, and the government has taken heed.
The issue of corruption, we have a number of work streams in the Interministerial Committee, and we've asked each one of them to look into the risks so that we can identify the risk and deal with the issues early and prevent corruption. We have also worked with the Treasury to reduce the level of the chain procurement chain process to make sure that we don't have too many people involved in the purchasing of the vaccines.
The first phase of the rollout is going to be a test run for what happens in phases 2 and 3 when 60% of the population then gets inoculated. Everyone's watching very closely, specifically when it comes to security and when it comes to corruption. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a short break. Straight ahead. DRC President Felix Tshisekedi moves to set out a new political alliance.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
The President of the Democratic Republic of Congo has begun the process of identifying politicians who will form a new coalition government. The move comes a day after the country's Prime Minister Sylvester Ilunkamba resigned following a no-confidence vote by lawmakers. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
The DRC Prime Minister Sylvester Ilunkamba tendered in his resignation to President Felix Tshisekedi on Friday. His resignation came 2 days after 367 MPs voted to remove him from office. The MPs accused the premier of incompetence and a series of other failures. His ouster is a major victory for President Tshisekedi, who has been pushing to get a majority in government.
The president had a prime minister with whom he could not collaborate. So he will now proceed and appoint somebody who will meet the kind of expectations that he has in terms of that collaboration that should exist between the prime minister and the president. So I think it will make governance a little bit easier for this president.
Supporters of President Tshisekedi believe the Prime Minister's resignation will enable him to transform the country.
It's truly known that he has a new vision. He has a new plan for eradicating the instability in the East. He's got a new plan. He's got new plans for the economy. Everything he's come up with is totally different than what we've had for so many years. So I think we should give him a chance and we'll see the result.
President Tshisekedi signed a power-sharing deal with his predecessor Joseph Kabila in 2019 after he failed to get a majority in parliament. But the two leaders had several disagreements over the governance of the country that led the president to end their coalition government. The DRC president now has a majority in parliament after convincing MPs who are allied to Joseph Kabila to cross to his camp. But some political analysts doubt whether the new leaders will really help improve the people's livelihood.
Those who are crossing from one side to the other are the same predators, people who brought this country down, who are now moving to the side that claims to come repair the country. How are we going to repair the country with the same folks who brought it down? And that is the key challenge that this regime will now have, how to change the mentality of this gathering of sheep and wolves, and everybody is together.
The UN recently warned that the political developments in the DRC could slide the country into conflict. The DRC Prime Minister is the latest victim of a power struggle between President Tshisekedi and former President Joseph Kabila. The former Speaker, Janine Mabunda, was the first. She was removed from office last December by legislators allied to President Tshisekedi. Their removal will enable the president to get a majority in the executive and the legislature under his new political outfit known as the Sacred Union. Chris Sachamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
In Libya's town of Tarwega, women are reviving an old-age tradition of weaving after a decade of war. The craft also offers a way to earn an income.
In an abandoned school in Tarwega in Libya, Halima Mohammed is busy knotting date palm leaves into something beautiful. Her father and sisters have been working in basketry for almost 50 years. She tapped into it 20 years ago.
This craft belonged to our ancestors. We hope as long as we are alive to teach it to our children because it provides a sufficient income, thanks to which we don't require the help of anyone.
Libya has been riven by civil war ever since the fall of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011. And Halima's town was once a flashpoint in the country's decade-long war. For some, the town's ancient tradition of weaving offers a way to earn an income, as well as resuming a way of life that the war had stopped.
It has been 6 or 7 months since we last received our salaries from the state. But when customers buy a large quantity of our products, we get enough money to live on and to cover our daily expenses. However, we suffer from the lack of palm leaves and dye, which we use for the handicrafts.
A workshop run by a local group and supported by the International Organization for Migration brought in experts to help perfect the weaving techniques.
The floor mats used to be imported from Egypt. They are manufactured in a different way there, during which different materials are used. The Egyptian floor mats dominated the Libyan market, while the floor mat made here in Tarwega was a big competitor among the imported products.
The weavers hope authorities will promote exports to allow this craft to prosper. Chamkono, CGTN.
Egypt has retrieved some 5,000 ancient artifacts from the United States after negotiations that started in 2016. These items were previously housed at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. Yasser Hakim has more from Cairo.
The 5,000 ancient items Cairo received from Washington are a mix of funeral masks, statue heads, manuscripts, and parts of coffins.
The manuscripts are written in Coptic language and Greco-Roman scripts, as well as religious manuscripts from Christian and Arabic languages. The items are from different periods. Some are from the Coptic times, while others are from the Islamic period and the Roman era.
The pieces are said to have been illegally excavated and smuggled to the United States. It took nearly 5 years of talks to get them back home.
Retrieving these ancient artifacts is important because they have been stolen, and secondly, because they represent different periods in Egypt's ancient civilization and could give us more insight about the different eras in Egypt's history.
Cairo has always found it difficult to regain its stolen artifacts from abroad, in spite of international law and UN resolutions backing Egypt's rights.
It's a crucial point because many countries don't abide by our laws. Trade in antiquities is legal in these countries. Anyone who holds these looted artifacts doesn't want to give it up easily, especially states that haven't signed the UN agreements pertaining to antiquities rights. In such cases, we try to strike bilateral deals with them.
Experts and officials say this week's success has given them the push to work harder and restore more of Egypt's ancient treasures.
Negotiations are ongoing and we're demanding the handover of most precious monuments in the world, such as the Zodiac, the Rosetta Stone, and Queen Nefertiti's head statue. We're optimistic they will be returned to Egypt.
In the meantime, the 5,000 pieces received from the United States this week will be displayed at the Coptic Museum in Cairo. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Coming up in sports. New Chelsea